was two young guys. They were about 18 years of age. We don't exactly know how old they were. Their names are Bezza and Oho. The reason we're calling them Bezza and Oho is because their real name is Bezaliel and Oholiab. And I will actually put their names on the screen so you can see how they were actually spelt. They were young guys and they'd been slaves their entire life, but not only had they been slaves, their parents had been slaves. Now, I know that you think sometimes you're a slave as a kid when your parents ask you to clean their room or clean your room or do the vacuuming for them or make some breakfast for them or help them out around the house, but that is nothing. These guys had slave masters over them and they were really mean people. They would have big whips, and if they didn't do it, they would say, whack! Whack! They would get hit with the whips on their back. They had seen their parents get hit, they had been hit, and they were getting fed up with it. You know, for years they'd heard that some saviour was going to come, someone who was going to save them from the mud. Because you see, you know what they had to do? You think cleaning your room is bad? I want you to imagine what it would be like if you had to spend all day in mud, put straw in the mud, step on the straw, and then once they were strong enough, you put them in this little mould that makes them a brick, and then you just leave them to dry in the sun. That was what they had to do. They had to go, people came, they gave them all this straw at this point, they put them in the mud, they stepped on them, they put more mud in and stepped on them, then they picked up the mud with all the straw in them, and they put them in these moulds. Over and over again, they would have to build bricks because they built these huge monuments for the king of Egypt, who was the person that would lead their country. The king of Egypt, his name was Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh was getting them to build all these beautiful things. They built cities, they built temples, and they were just working on a temple at the moment. Now Bezza and Oho, their parents told them to calm down, but you see, the Egyptians had actually taken Bezza and Oho and they had trained them. They had trained them to make things out of gold, to carve rocks the right way, to make beautiful things out of material, and they actually found they were pretty gifted at it. And they were put in charge of all these buildings, of designing them. And so the plan, they thought, if we're going to be slaves, we're going to teach these people some lessons. So they set up this trap. You see, the Pharaoh, or the king, and his son, very young guy, he was probably only maybe 8 to 10 years old, maybe not even that old. They were going to come and they were going to open this huge temple to one of their gods. They'd built this beautiful big temple, and in front of the big temple there were some pillars, and they'd actually loosened one of the pillars. They just pulled a little string on the ground, would fall and roll down the steps of this ornament and land right on the very front, and the king and his son were going to stand halfway up the steps. So they waited, they were forced to stand there in the mud up to their ankles, mud squishing between their toes, mud squishing up their legs, sometimes it'd squish in their eyes or their nose. It was really disgusting what they had to do with the mud. But they were standing there in the mud, they had the slave master looking over them, he had his hand buried in the mud so that he could actually hold the rope. And as the Pharaoh was talking and as his son was standing there next to him, they waited for the right moment. There was a whole heap of soldiers in front, and Bezza and Oho thought, this is going to be so great. Not only are we going to wipe out the king and his son, we're going to wipe out a heap of soldiers too. And just as it got to the point, Bezza reached down into the mud, got the little string, and pulled it, and was waiting for the pillar to fall and kill the king. And they waited for something to happen, and they looked and they started to hear a crack, and then
That's a rat.